Hello there, and welcome to Restful Diaries. I'm so glad you found your way to our cozy little home here. Please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. It helps other tired and restless souls find their way to us. Thank you. Before we begin, one small thing. The soft sounds of wind through a countryside and the raindrops on a cobblestone road will keep playing long after the story has ended. So you can let these sounds carry you all the way down into a deep and restful sleep. If it helps, you can set a sleep timer and turn off autoplay so that nothing wakes you once you've drifted off. Whatever sort of day you've had, the long kind or the heavy kind, or the kind that simply asked more of you than you had to give, allow yourself the grace to release those tensions, those stresses, and all of those emotions that kept you at capacity. The hours in front of you ask for nothing at all. In a moment, the picture on your screen will dim so that the light does not distract your busy mind from the restful slumber ahead of you. So make yourself comfy wherever it is you are lying, and let the dark of the room be as deep as it wants to be. There is nothing here you need to watch over. When it suits you, and not a moment sooner, allow your eyes to feel their heaviness and allow them to slowly fall into the calm and serene darkness of your room. Take the one slow breath you never found the time for all day, and let it go again without chasing it, and another after that. Let each breath leave you a little slower than it came, and feel the day loosen its grip a notch at a time. Whatever you are still holding, you can set it down now, the way one leaves their wet boots on the step. It will keep till morning without you minding it. There is only the warmth now, the deep low heat of a turf fire kept in since the dawn, banked and red and gone right into the stones of the walls. The rain is on the hills, and the wind is going over them in the dark, and not one cold breath of it can find the way in to where you are. Let each breath set you down a little further, the way an old house eases and settles itself when the night comes on, until there is nothing left to hold to, and only the one voice to follow. And far off in the dark, a window still lit, high up on the hill. That window, tonight, is a baker's, and the place is the high country of Donegal, away in the west of Ireland, in the tail end of the year 1900. think of a low white house standing above a stony road, a half door and a thatch and a chimney breathing up one thin grey thread of turf smoke, and a hearth inside it that is never quite let die. Before the sun is up, and long after it is down, there is bread being made in that house. The man who makes it is Cornelius Boyle, though not a soul in the parish has called him anything but Neil in 60 years. He has been a baker his whole life, as his mother was before him. His wife Sarah is some years in the ground now, God rest her. His sons are away over the water after the work, and his youngest, his girl Bridget, is further again, in service in the city of Boston, in America. Her last letter said she was hoping to come home. So Neil keeps her bread ready and a lamp lit in the window, and he does not let himself count up the years since he last heard her at the door. You'll come to know that turf fire and the old black pot he bakes in that they call the bastable, and the cross he cuts into every loaf the way Sarah showed him to let the fairies out. There will be a crock of buttermilk and a wee grey ass named Barney who holds Neil to blame for the rain, and a collie named Bran by the hearth, and a robin at the half door when the frost comes, and kept high and safe on the dresser, a tin with every letter Bridget ever sent folded away inside it. There is no turn you have to wait on, and no end you have to reach. You are free to let go of every word the moment it has gone by. Now, it is a wet morning in the middle of October, and there is a fire to be woken, and the day's bread to be made. Let's begin. I was up before the light, the way I have been up before the light for the most of my life, and the first thing in the world is the fire. A turf fire is never quite out in this house, only sleeping under its own grey ash, and you wake it the way you would wake a child, gently and without any hurry. I raked the warm ash off the coals, and I set on fresh turf from the creel by the hearth, and I leaned in and blew until the red came up through the black. The smell of it, then, is the smell of every morning I have known. Outside the half door, the rain was coming down soft on the street, and on the hills behind the house, the slow grey rain of the autumn that does not so much fall as settle. Inside, the fire took, and the room began to warm, and that is the whole of a baker's morning, when you come down to it, to be the warm, dry place, while the weather does what it likes. Then the bread. I had the flour ready, and the bread soda, and and the crock of buttermilk that goes sour and lively the way the soda likes. There is no waiting with this bread, no yeast to coax, and no long rising, which is why it is the bread of the hills, where yeast was hard to come by, and a woman had a fire and a fistful of soda and not much else. You work it quick and light with a quiet hand, and the less you handle it, the better it is. I gathered it into a round, and I set it in the black pot, the bastable, and before I put the lid on, I cut a cross in the top of it with the knife. Sarah taught me that, to let the fairies out. She would say it every morning of her life, to let the fairies out and laugh. And I cut the cross still, every loaf, and I think of her when I do it. Then the lid on, and red coals heaped up on the lid with the tongs, so the bread bakes from the top as well as the under, and you leave it be. The same day, the round. By the middle of the morning, the first baking was done, and I knew it was done the way you always know, by the knock. You tip the loaf out, and you rap it on the bottom with your knuckle, and if it answers you hollow, it is ready, and if it answers you dull, it wants a while longer. This one answered hollow and fine. I loaded the cart then for the round. Barney, the wee grey ass, was at the gable out of the rain, and he gave me the look he always gives me, the look that says he knows the day is wet, and he holds me to blame for it. I had the warm fowls wrapped under a clean sack to hold the heat, and we went down the stony road to the scattered houses below. The McGinty children were at their door before I was well in the street, the whole stair-step row of them, for they know the sound of the cart, and they know that the end house gets a warm fowl handed in for the breakfast. The smallest one took it in both her hands the way you would take something alive. It is a small thing to hand a warm fowl in at a cold door. It is most of why I do the work at all. The kitchen and the black pot. I will tell you about my kitchen, for it is the whole of my world the most of the time, and a man may as well know the room he is being kept company in. It is a low room, with the one small window and the half door, and the hearth taking up the most of the one gable. An open hearth you could nearly stand up in, with the crane swung over it. The crane is a great iron arm fixed into the wall that swings in and out over the fire, with the crook and the pot hooks hung off it, and on it goes the kettle and the pots, and you swing them in over the heat or out to cool with the one hand, and down among the coals on its own 3 feet sits the bastable, the black three-legged pot I bake the bread in. That pot was my mother's, and her mother's before her, I am told, and it is older than any person now living that I know of. Sarah used to scour it bright with sand and a wet cloth, and she would not have a speck on it, and I keep it the way she kept it, out of habit, and out of something more than habit. The dresser stands against the far wall, with the few good plates stood up on their edges along it, the way they are stood in every house in this country, more for the look of them than the use. It is not much of a room, but it is warm, and it is mine, and there has been bread made in it for 100 years. A day for the potato bread. There was a heap of potatoes wanting using before they went soft on me, and so I gave the next morning to potato bread, which is a different thing entirely from the soda bread, and a great favourite in this country. There are two halves to the potato bread, and that is the whole trick of it. You boil a share of the potatoes, and you mash them down well while they are still hot, with a knob of butter through them, and that is the one half, and the other half you grate raw, the raw potato, through the fine of the grater, and it comes away wet, and you wring the wet out of it in a cloth till it is near dry. Then you bring the two together, the soft cooked and the raw, with a fistful of flour and a pinch of salt to bind them, and there is your dough. It is baked thin on the griddle, the flat iron, and not in the pot, and turned the once when the underside has gone a good brown, and it cooks quick. The smell of it is its own smell, earthier than the bread. There is nothing better than a round of it, with a bit of butter melting down into it, while it is hot off the iron. I had a few rounds for my own dinner, and I sent a parcel of it down to the McGinty's, for a houseful of children will go through potato bread faster than you can lift it off the griddle. After the low houses, I took the cart on up the far side of the glen to the widow Friel's, the way I do twice in the week, for she keeps a cow, and I do not, and her buttermilk is the best in the townland for the bread. The collie came out to meet me first, Bran, my own dog, who rides up on the cart when the notion takes him, and walks when it does not. The widow Friel is a great age now, and there is not much left that she can chew, so I keep a loaf for her made soft and close, with no hard crust to trouble her, and I take it to her hand and not leave it on the sill. She gave me the buttermilk in the crock and a wet cloth over it, and she kept me a while at the door with the talk, the way the old and the alone will, and I was in no hurry to be gone. The rain had eased to a soft thing you would hardly call rain. I will tell you about the bread, since we have the time, And since there is nothing in the world more restful than the making of it, wheat does not love these wet hills. But soda bread asks very little. You take your flour and your pinch of soda and your sour buttermilk, and when the wet meets the soda, there is a small life that comes up in it. A faint hiss you can hear if the house is quiet, and that small life is the whole of the rising. There is no kneading to speak of. You bring it together with the one hand, light, the way you would gather something that might take fright, and the moment it holds, you stop. A heavy hand makes a heavy loaf. That is the only secret there is, and it is not much of a secret. My mother had it from her mother, and Sarah had it from me, and I have it yet. The evening of the same day. The dark comes early now, and the round done, and the cart put up. The evening is my own. I had my tea at the fire, with bran stretched the length of the hearth, and the wind getting up a little in the chimney. I took the tin down from the high shelf of the dresser, the way I do most evenings, though I will not always own to it. It is an old tin that held sweets one Christmas long ago, and it holds Bridget's letters now, every one she has sent from America, in their thin envelopes with the foreign stamps. She is in service in a big house in the city of Boston. My Bridget, the youngest of mine and the last to go. The others are scattered and good men, but it is Bridget's hand I know the best, for she writes the most faithful. I read the last one again by the lamp, though I have it near by heart. She is well, she says. The people are good to her. And then the line I have read more than all the rest of it together. The line where she says that, please God, she hopes to be home before too long. I put the tin back on the shelf. I keep her bread ready. That is all a body can do from this far off, and so I do it. A hard frost, and the robin back at the door. The rain went off in the night, and the cold came down instead, and I woke to the first real frost of the year. The fields gone white and stiff, and the puddles on the street with a skin of ice on them. There is a robin that comes to the half door when the cold sets in. The same robin I will always think, though it can hardly be. And he stands on the top of the lower door with his chest out and watches me work for the few crumbs I leave him. On a hard morning, the warmth of the bakehouse goes out the open top of the door like a hand held out, and the small birds know it, and I do not begrudge them. I had a notion for oaten bread, the way the cold puts me in the notion of it, the old hard bread of the hills that keeps. I mixed the oatmeal stiff and rolled it thin, and I baked the cakes on the iron, and then I stood them up to harden on the little wooden frame before the fire, the Harnan stand, leaning them to the heat the way you would lean your hands to it. They go hard, and they keep for weeks, and there is no better thing with a bit of butter and a mug of tea on a cold day. The hens were giving out below the window for their feed the whole time. They have no patience, hens, and no sense of the order a morning should go in. A day at the creamery down in Clunbeg. A day or two on, and I took the cart the whole way down to the village, to Clunbeg, for the flour comes in on the carrier's cart, and there are things a house needs that the hills do not provide. Charlie Doherty is the carrier, and he brings everything that comes up from the town, the flour and the tea and the sugar and the post, and he is the nearest thing we have on these roads to news. Charlie and I stood a while at the creamery wall, and he gave me the talk of the parish, who was ailing and who was mending, and whose beasts had done well at the fair. The rain held off and gave us a soft grey day. The hills all gone to a gentle nothing in the mist, the kind of day where the whole world draws in close and quiet around you and asks nothing of you at all. I bought my flour and a £1/4 of tea, and I will own, I asked Charlie the way I ask him every time, and try to ask it lightly, whether there was anything for me in the post. There was not this day. There is no shame in the asking. Then up the hill again, home, the ass in no great hurry, and neither was I. A churning day, up at the Widow Friel's. I went up for the buttermilk on a morning the Widow Friel had the churn going, and she had me stop and take a turn at it, for it is heavy work for an old woman, and she was glad of the arm. It is the dash churn she has, the old upright kind, a tall wooden vessel with a lid, and a long staff that comes up through a hole in the lid with a cross of wood on the foot of it, and you work the staff up and down, plunging the cream, and that is the churning. There is a great patience wanted in it, for the butter comes when it comes and not a moment before, and you can be at it the best part of an hour with nothing at all to show, only the slap and the suck of the cream going heavier under the dash. And then, all of a sudden, the sound changes, and you feel the butter break and come, the little grains of it gathering and clumping in the churn. And there it is. The Widow Friel gathered the butter then, and washed it in cold water, and worked it with the wooden pats, and salted it, and the thin sour milk that was left, the buttermilk the butter came out of, that is what she fills my crock with. and that is what lifts the bread. I came down the hill with my arm tired, and my crock full, and a fresh pat of her butter, besides, wrapped in a leaf. And I thought, the way I often think, that there is no thing on a table that did not cost somebody an hour of their arm. A still day, the fog down. There are days here when the wind drops away to nothing at all, and the fog comes down soft and low on the hills, and the whole world goes quiet and close about the house, and this was one of them. On a day like that, the hills do not so much disappear as quietly decline to be looked at, going back into the white, one fold at a time, until the nearest field is the whole of the world. I did not go out on the round, for there was bread enough out from the day before, and a still foggy day is no day to be rattling a cart down a hill you cannot see the bottom of. I kept in, and I kept the fire, and I baked the one baking for the house, and between whiles I sat in the open half door with my mug of tea and watched the fog not moving. A robin came and went. A turf settled in the fire with a small, soft sound. Somewhere off in the white of it, a dog barked, the once, a long way down, and thought the better of it. It is a strange thing to say of a day that nothing at all happened in it, and to mean it for high praise. But that is the truth of the matter, and those still close days are among the best a man is ever given, if he has the wit to know it while he is inside one. I did not always have the wit. I have it now. I let the whole still day go by me, and I did not lift a hand to hurry it on. Getting ready for Samhain. The end of October now, and Samhain near, and there is a thing I make at this turn of the year that I make at no other, and that is the barmbrack. It is Sarah's brack by rights, for it is her receipt, and her hand I learned it from. The fruited bread that is darker and richer and sweeter than the everyday loaf, with currants and raisins and a bit of peel in it. The first of it is the fruit, and the fruit must soak. I put the currants and the raisins in a bowl the night before, and I drown them in cold, strong tea, and leave them by the fire to swell and grow soft, and take up all that dark sweetness. And the smell of them in the morning is the smell of the whole season to me. Bridget loved the brack above any food in the world when she was a child. She would have it toasted, with the butter going down into it. I cannot make the brack and not think of her small face at the table waiting on it. So I make it, and I will keep a piece of it by, in case. Samhain, the last night of October. The fruit had its night to soak, And on the morning of Samhain, I made the bracts, and made a good few of them, for they are for the giving. You work the soaked fruit through the flour and the soda, with an egg this time, and a spoon of sugar, the way you would not for the plain bread, and it goes heavier and wetter into the pot. The brack wants a long, slow bake, longer than the loaf, with the coals kept even on the lid and not too fierce, and you let it take its time, and the house fills the while with a smell there is no word for but warm. And there is the old thing we do that Sarah's people did, and her people before them, of baking a ring down into the one brack. For it is said, the one who gets the ring in their cease will be married within the year. I put the ring in, wrapped in a scrap of paper. The McGinty's had a houseful in for the night, the children going from door to door, and I sent 2 bracts down to them warm, and I kept the one with the ring for their table. For there is a daughter there of an age to be teased about it, and the teasing is half the night's pleasure. I had my own slice by the fire, with bran, and no ring in it, and I was glad enough of that. I am long past the want of a ring. I have had my marriage, and it was a good one. God be good to her. A letter. The first week of November. It was Charlie Doherty brought it up himself, and would not let it go up with another, for he knew the hand on it. And he stood in the street and watched my face while I opened it. The rogue, with the rain coming down on the both of us. It was from Bridget. My hands had flour on them still, and there is a soft grey mark on the page, yet where my thumb held it. She is coming home. She has the passage taken, she says, on a ship out of Boston. And if the weather is kind, she will be on the water before the month is far on, and home, please God, before the worst of the winter closes the roads. I read it twice in the street, and then I had to put my hand to the wall a minute, and Charlie said nothing at all, which was a kindness in him, only gripped my shoulder the once and went on down to his cart. Home. After the years of it, I went in and I sat at the fire, and I did not light the lamp for a long while, only sat with the letter in my 2 hands in the last of the daylight. And Bran came and put his head on my knee the way he does when he knows a thing is astir in me, though he could not know what. Airing the room. The next days I gave to the readying, for there is a deal to do to a house that has held only the one old man for a long time, to make it fit again for a daughter. There is a small room off the kitchen that was the girls' room once, and it has been shut and cold this long while, and I opened it up to the air and to the fire's heat. I carried turf in and kept a fire in the little grate till the damp went out of the walls, and I aired the bedclothes day after day at the kitchen fire, and I put the warming pan in the bed of an evening, the copper pan with the coals in it, to take the chill of the years out of the mattress. It is foolish, maybe, to warm a bed weeks before there is anyone to lie in it, but it gave me a great peace to do it. And from that evening on, I did a thing I had not done in years. I set the lamp in the front window when the dark came down and trimmed it to a good steady flame and left it burning there so that the window would be lit, and I left the door on the latch and not bolted. She would not come for weeks yet, I knew that, but I would not have the house dark and shut against her a single night sooner than it had to be. The round and the whole townland told. I am not a man for telling my business on the street, but there is no keeping a thing like this, and nor did I want to keep it. And by the end of the week, I think there was not a house on my round that did not know Neil Boyle's Bridget was coming home from America. It is a thing about a small place that the joy of the one house is shared out among the rest, the way trouble is. The widow Friel took my hand in her two old hands at her door and held it and said nothing for a moment, for she had a daughter went out and never came back, and so she knew the whole weight of the word home, the both sides of it. The McGinty children wanted to know, would Bridget bring them something from America? For in their minds America is a place made all of presents. Master Sweeney, the schoolmaster, said she had been the quickest girl ever sat in his school, and that he was glad. I went up the hills with my warm fowls under the sack the same as any week, but the round was lighter on me that week than it has been in years. A wild, wet stretch, the middle of November. Then the weather came in hard, the way it will in November here, and for the better part of a week it blew and rained without let, and I will not pretend my heart was easy with Bridget somewhere out on that grey water. The burn at the foot of the glen came up brown and loud, and the bog road went to a soft ruin, and the rain came at the house in long grey ropes off the hills. But I will tell you, there is a great comfort in being the warm place on a wild day, and in knowing your work and doing it. While it blew, I kept the fire, and I kept the baking, and the bakehouse was warm as a held hand the whole time. The turf is the heart of it, and I am glad every winter of the bog. We cut the turf in the long days of summer, away up on the hill, and foot it and stack it and let the wind and the sun take the wet out of it, and we draw it home and build it into the great stack at the gable against the year. It is slow to come to heat and slow to let it go. A turf fire, low and steady and faithful, and there is no warmth in the world like it. I banked it high those wild nights, and it held its red till morning, and the house was never cold. Please God, I thought, she has as warm a corner on that ship. Baking ahead, against her coming, I could not know the day she would come, only that it would be soon. And so I did what a baker does with a worry, which is to turn it into bread. I baked ahead, and I baked well. I made sure the widow Friel had her soft loaves to carry her through the bad roads, and that the McGinty's were not short, for a house full of children eats its way through bread like weather through a hill. And I made a brack, not a Samhain brack with a ring in it, only Sarah's good brack, dark and rich, the kind Bridget loved toasted at this very fire. And I made it so that there would be one in the house ready for her the hour she came, whatever hour that was. I wrapped it in a clean cloth and set it by. It is a strange and happy thing to bake for someone who is on their way to you across the whole width of the world. Every loaf I set in the pot, those days I set in with the one thought that the next, or the one after, might be the last I would bake in an empty house. A windy night, near the end of the waiting. One night, near the end of it, the wind got up great and wild after dark, and I sat late at the fire with Bran, not able for my bed, listening to it go over the house. There is a sound a house makes on a wild night, when it is a good house and a tight one, a sort of settling and easing, the slates lifting the least bit and laying back down, the wind finding the gable and giving it up again. It is a sound I have known my whole life, and it has never once frightened me. I went round the house before I slept, the way I do, with the candle in my hand, and I damped the fire down safe, and I tried the latch on the door, and I stood a moment in the dark of the kitchen with the wind outside, and the warmth inside, and the red glow of the banked fire on the hearth. It is a good thing to know, walking through your own house in the dark, that it is warm, and that it is tight, and that it will keep the night out till morning. I went to my bed easy. The lamp I left burning in the window, the way I had every night now, a small steady light against all that dark. A grey Sunday. There was a Sunday in the thick of the waiting, a soft, grey, quiet day. and I walked down to Clunbeg to the chapel the way I do, and it was a still day, with no wind in it at all for a wonder. The fire I leave low and safe on a Sunday morning, and let the bread alone, for even a baker keeps the one day. The chapel was warm with the breath of the people in it, and the rain soft on the windows, and I will own that my mind was not the whole time on the prayers, but was out on the grey sea more than it was on the altar. Coming home up the hill, the mist was down so low and so soft that the world ended a field away in every direction, and there was only the wet road under me and the sound of my own boots, and here and there a wet sheep looking out at me from the grey. A day drawn in small and close. I came into the fire and put the kettle on the crane and swung it over the heat, and had my tea and a heel of yesterday's loaf, and the long Sunday afternoon went by me slow and easy as the mist on the hill. Word at last, and then on a grey evening near the month's end, Charlie Doherty came up the hill out of the dusk with his cart, and he did not even tie the horse, only called to me from the street that she was landed. She was landed and safe, off the ship at last, and on the train. And there was word sent ahead that she would be brought up from the town the very next that could be managed, in a day, in 2 days at the most. I do not rightly remember what I said to Charlie. I remember the dusk and his old face glad in it, and the lamp behind me in the window throwing my own shadow long down the wet street. She was on dry land. She was in Ireland, after the years of her being a hand on a page and a stamp from a far place. She was near enough now that the same rain was falling on the both of us. I did not sleep much that night, and I did not mind. I got up and I baked in the small hours, for I could not lie still, and the baking is the thing I do with whatever is too big in me to hold. The night she came home, it was a wild, wet night that she came. Of all the nights, the rain driving and the wind up, and I have thought since that it was right it should be so, for it meant the house was at its warmest and its brightest the hour she stepped into it. I had the word that day that she would be brought up in the evening, and so from the dark coming down, I had the fire built high, and the brack ready by, and the kettle full on the crane, and the lamp in the window trimmed to its best and steadiest flame, and I had the door on the latch. I sat, and I could not sit, and I stood at the half door looking down into the wet dark for the light of a cart, and the rain came in on me over the door, and I did not heed it. It was near 9 o'clock when I heard it, the wheels on the stones below, and a man's voice gentling a horse, and then a light swinging low and coming up the street. A neighbour had brought her the last miles up the bad hill road in his own trap, and he told me after that she had known the turn of the road in the dark by nothing but the smell of the turf smoke, my turf smoke, on the wet wind, and had said to him, "That is my father's fire." And then she was down off the trap and at the half door, and I had the lower half of it open and my arms around her before I had any words at all. She was cold, and she was wet through, and she was thin from the long travelling, and she was my Bridget, grown and a woman and home. I brought her in to the fire. I took the wet coat off her, and I sat her into the warm, in Sarah's chair, and Bran went straight to her and put his head in her lap, as though she had never been gone a day, and knew her, which I will never understand and will always be glad of. I cut the brack and I toasted it at the fire the old way, and I buttered it for her, and she ate it with the tears going down her face and laughing at herself for it. And I was no better. The rain battered the window, the lamp burned, and the long, empty years of the house seemed to me, in that hour, a thing that had happened to some other man a great while ago. The morning after, I woke before the light out of the old habit, and lay a moment in the dark, and could not think what it was that was different. And then I knew there was breathing in the small room off the kitchen. The house was not empty. I went out and reddened the fire as soft as I could, not to wake her, and I stood and looked the once at the closed door of the small room, the door I had kept warm against this, and then I let her sleep, for she had earned her sleep, and the whole width of an ocean was in her bones. I made the bread quiet, and when she came out at last in the grey of the morning, with her hair down, and Sarah's old shawl about her that she had found on the chair and taken without asking, the way she would have as a child, she stood in the kitchen door and looked at the fire and the flour and the black pot, and she said it had not changed, that it was the very same, and that she had carried this room in her head the whole time she was away. We had no great talk that morning. We did not need it. We had our tea at the fire, and the round could wait the one day, and did. A baking day, the two of us. She was up at my elbow the next morning, wanting to make the bread, and so I let her, and stood back and watched my daughter's hands do the thing my hands have done every morning of my life. She had not forgotten it. The hands remember what the head lets go. Bridget gathered the dough light with the one hand, the way Sarah did, the way I taught her when she was small enough to stand on a stool to reach the table, and she brought it together and knew the moment to stop. And then, before I could say a word of it, she took the knife and cut the cross in the top of the loaf and said it low to herself, not knowing I heard, to let the fairies out. Her mother's words, in her mother's voice nearly, in my kitchen again after all the silent years. I had to turn and see to the fire, a moment that did not need seeing to. Then we set her loaf in the bastable together and heaped the coals on the lid, and it baked as fine a loaf as ever I made, and we ate it between us at the dinner, and I do not think I have tasted better in my life. Bridget settling in. The small room off the kitchen is Bridget's room again now, and it is a strange and good thing to watch it filling up with a person's small belongings after the long years it held only the cold. She had the one trunk brought up the hill on the cart, and she was a day unpacking it, for she would stop over every second thing and tell me the story of it, where it came from, what it cost, and who she had been with when she bought it. There was a shawl she had carried home for me, a fine warm one of grey wool, far too good for an old baker to wear at his oven, and I will keep it for mass and for good. And there was a thing she had carried the whole way across the sea, wrapped up in her clothes so it would not break. A small framed photograph of the big house in Boston where she was in service, the grand front of it with the steps and the tall windows, so that I could see the place that had her all those years. I looked at it a long while. It is a fine house. It is a far grander house than ever I stood in. But I will tell you, I was glad past the saying of it that the photograph was here on my dresser, and the girl herself here in the room, and not the other way round. Bridget put Sarah's old shawl about her shoulders in the evenings without thinking, the way she would have as a child, and the sight of it never fails to catch at me. A great baking, the two of us. We had it in our heads, the both of us, that we owed the townland something for the welcome it had given Bridget home, and the only coin a baker has to pay a debt in is bread. And so we gave a whole day to a great baking. We were at it from the dark of the morning, the two of us, and the kitchen was warm as summer, with the fire built up, and the both of us working. I made the soda bread and the brown, batch after batch, and the Bastable was never let go cold. And Bridget made the bracts, Sarah's brack, dark and rich and full of fruit. For a brack is a thing for an occasion, and the whole townland coming to itself after the bad weather was occasion enough. We worked easy together, the way you do at a thing you both know in your hands. Hardly a word wanted, only the odd touch of an elbow at the table, and the fire to be fed, and the pots to be swung in and out on the crane. By the evening, there was bread cooling on every flat thing in the house, on the table, and the dresser, and the window board, and the backs of the chairs. The whole place gone over to it. And the next day we took it all round on the cart. A loaf and a piece of brack to every house on my round, and would take not a penny for any of it. It was the best day's work I have done in many a year, and the best company I have had at it in far longer. The great storm. We were not long together when the worst night of the winter came. A great storm up off the sea that they spoke of after for years, and it found the two of us already home and warm and shut in safe against it. It came on after the dark, and it grew till the whole night was one long roar in the chimney. The rain, like handfuls of gravel flung at the glass. The wind going over the hill with a sound like the sea itself had come up to walk on the land. On another year, I would have sat that night out alone and minded it little, for I am used to my own company. But it is a different thing entirely to be warm by your fire on a wild night, with your own at your side. We banked the fire high, and we let the storm do its worst. Bridget told me of America, of the great city, and the noise of it, and the big house and the people. And I told her the small news of the townland, who was wed, and who was waked in the years she was gone. And the storm went over us, and we hardly heeded it. The bread was in the crock, the turf was in the stack, the door was tight, and the lamp was lit. There was not one thing that wild night could take from us, for everything I had in the world was inside the one warm room with me. The calm after the storm. The storm blew itself out before the morning, the way the worst of them do, and we woke to a still white world. The first snow come down on the tops in the night, and the air gone clean and sharp and quiet. The road was strewn with broken branches, and a slate or two off the byre, but the house stood sound, as I knew it would, and the hills above us were white and shining and still in the new light. We went out on the round together, the two of us up on the cart, and Barney stepping careful on the hard road, and Bran running on ahead. And at every house there was a face glad to see Neil Boyle's daughter up on the cart beside him at last. The widow Friel cried, and would not be ashamed of it. The McGinty children got their file, and got besides a long account of the city of Boston that left them speechless. It was the best round I have walked in 20 years, and the warm fowls went out of the cart and into the cold hands the same as they have always done. And it was the same work it has always been, and it was not the same at all. A quiet evening, the year turning. The days have settled now into a new shape, or an old shape made new, and of an evening I will sit at the fire with Bridget across from me in her mother's chair, and the dog between us, and it is the thing I had stopped letting myself want. I took the tin down off the high shelf the other evening, out of the old habit, before I minded what I was doing, and Bridget asked me what it was, and I told her it was every letter she ever sent me, kept. She did not laugh at me for it. She came and sat by me, and we read a few of them over together, the two of us, the far-off voice on the page, and the near voice in the room, the one and the same now. I think Sarah was near us that evening. I am not a man given to fancies, but I have baked in this kitchen 40 years, and I know when the house is content, and it was content. The tin is back up on the shelf. I do not take it down so often now. I have no need. A wet morning again. And so it is a wet morning in the hills again as I write this. No different to the 100 before it. The rain soft on the street and on the hills behind, and the fire wanting reddening, and the day's bread to make. But there is a second cup at the table now, and a light step in the small room, and a voice that says good morning to me out of the grey. I raked the ash, and I woke the fire, and I made the bread, and I cut the cross in the top of it to let the fairies out, and I set it in the black pot, the same as I have every morning of my long life. Outside, the rain came down on the hills, soft and grey and faithful. Inside, the fire took, and the room warmed, and there was warm bread coming, and everyone I love in the world was under the one roof. A man could ask for less and still have enough. I have a great deal more than enough. You can let the hills go now. Let the little white house blur, and the lamp in the window soften, and the fire sink down to its red. There is nothing more you need to follow, and no one waiting on you. You can keep the rain sounds of a good, tight house, and let them stay with you where you lie. Let my voice go now, and let the rain take over the telling. You are warm. You are safe. The fire is banked, and the door is tight, and the night will keep itself without any help from you. Let yourself grow heavy and easy and sink the last of the way down. There is warm bread coming in the morning. There is nothing at all to do but sleep. Rest now. All is well. And the rain goes on over the hills.